Yes, I
Okay, good. Oh, what's that?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was snowing on the hillside.
I got snowed on,
Did you?
yeah. It was close to hail.
Yeah,
Somebody said they had hail.
so that was Jack over in the Trumansburg area.
Yeah. No, this was.
How cold did you get last?
What's that?
How cold
Below
did you get?
freezing.
It was cold.
At 29.
I left it, I think I left the plants around the porch.
Could be worse tonight though.
Oh, yeah.
It's supposed to be worse.
Yeah. They're calling for low 30. And that's at the airport. We're usually 4 degrees below that.
I don't have my phone with me. Check.
You don't have what?
My phone, I didn't bring my purse.
Mine is the part.
Don't worry.
Okay, let's go.
That's working fine. It's just that, here we go.
I looked at a couple and I saw.
I did look at them all.
Well, good for you.
So.
That's gonna be okay.
what's your opinion? There's, another way.
Oh.
Right?
Wait, we have more abstentions.
No.
Oh,
Yeah, you didn't. look.
No, we paid the bills at least.
oh, we're talking about the minutes.
Minutes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so could everybody bring a microphone within range?
Hello?
So the issue we had with the microphones was the way the system's set up, the microphone for Zoom is what sits in front of the speaker. So
Are you talking to, why are you pointing?
I'm pointing at the microphone, which is sitting in front of the speaker for the room. So
Something over there at the.
over there, right,
In front of that.
that round
the
thing is the
round
microphone.
thing.
And the Zoom, what it does is it picks up the sound coming out of the speaker. And then it transmits it to the Zoom audience. So what happened the other night was that the speaker got turned and the microphone got set aside so that it wasn't hearing what was coming out of the speaker. So, and it might solve all of the problem because we still have to be within range of the microphone, but it helps if the microphone is somewhere near where we can pick out.
Yeah, probably.
All right, so let's call the meeting to order.
Hanging off that chair.
What?
Looks like a noose, isn't it?
What?
I'll show you later.
What, you're talking about the floral ball?
There's a rope hanging off that chair, a string hanging off that chair that looks like a noose.
Oh,
The
great.
chair,
Oh, yes, yes. Well, that might have been part of the props for the other night.
Yes.
Mine has to be-
Yeah, right. Oh, let's see.
Okay,
So the additions were moved to the tail of the agenda, right?
Yes.
Dan gave us his report. Well, wait a minute, we should do privilege of the floor. Would anybody like to address the board who is in the Zoom audience? Rhonda. Ms. Roaring, we recognize you. Here we go.
Yes, I'm here. I just wanted to ask a question. I noticed that there have been, not a lot, but a few sales of gaming permits. And I was wondering if Janice, when she has her time for the clerk's report, could explain if these gaming permits are going to private gaming or to public gaming, and if they're going to if they're going to private gaming, is this something we should start regulating? Is someone running gaming out of their home, for example? So that's all I'm asking. What is the gaming all about?
It's turkey season, isn't it?
No, that's not those kind of games.
Hmm?
Not those kind of games.
Oh, that kind, you're talking about bingo and whatnot, yeah. Maybe Janice could answer that question.
Would you like me to answer now or
No,
later?
why not?
So the games of chance are every year, I'll turn my camera on. Every year, the American Legion does a games of chance license, and they do it for bell jar games. But that's basically the only license that we get. They've done it for years. I think they didn't do it in 2020, but they did it in 21, 22, and this is the third year that since I've been here that they've done it. So yeah, it's just the American Legion.
Okay, thank you.
Ed? Well, you were unmuted. There you go.
I was very fast on the push button, so I unmuted myself at the same time that she muted. Anyway, we both did it.
Yeah.
I have three things. I only had two, but you just made me think of a third. The explanation you just gave for the poor sound during last couple of meetings is hard to believe. If you have a microphone in front of your speaker in order to get sound into Zoom, that's beyond Fred Flintstone's pet dinosaur would know better than that. It's another case where a $10 or $15 part would completely eliminate the problem. You should be running a USB interface from your mixer, which is right behind you, directly into the sound input of the computer that's running the Zoom, and you'd have perfect sound. I'm just amazed that you wouldn't have done that in the first place. You are getting good advice, right? I've offered several times to give good advice on this. Second comment, last Wednesday's meeting, its content and its length were entirely predictable. And I would just like to suggest that the next time that something like that comes up, that instead of rescheduling the actual content of the meeting to another day, when the public isn't there for the most part, except for the most diehard participants, you instead scheduled a special meeting for the entirely predictable 3 hours of interaction with the public. And third, you have a letter or a report or something from the CAC, which is part of the agenda. And I would like to remind the board that the meeting at which the CAC discussed tax relief
Abatement.
for people with large properties, the committee which developed those recommendations asked to attend that meeting and be there to answer questions, and was not, basically the meeting went on without them. And I was able to listen to the recording of that meeting afterwards. And let's just say that the CAC was given bad information by the people who did try to answer questions, and that during the meeting itself, various members, at least one, I think more than one, expressed in pejorative terms that people who wanted this kind of benefit were simply out to take money away from the town or something like that. It was really a rather ugly statement or set of statements. That being the case, I hope that you would keep an open mind toward this legislation and perhaps ask to have the input from the original committee that made the proposal that the New York State Legislature passed, to get input from them. Thank you. Enjoy your meeting.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, Teresa's not chiming in. Did I put on the agenda? I still haven't heard from the seniors, Teresa. Okay, let's see, next up is did we get the clerk's report? We did.
I'm not sure that we did.
Link to
there's
the
a link to it, and there was a copy, and I did look at it.
You did, or you did or did not?
Did not, I did.
You did. That's okay, yeah. I didn't. Because I didn't look at it. Yeah, she got it to us kind of at the last minute, but it wasn't there at the last meeting. All right. So, there's a whole pile of minutes.
Yes. I do have one question. Why the hell is December 6th nothing?
What?
Why is December 6th missing?
Oh,
You're asking me?
Yeah.
So December 6th is missing because it's the 3-hour meeting that hasn't been fully processed yet with the transcript. So it's still being worked on.
What took so long? I don't remember that.
huh.
Yeah, and most of it was not doing things. It was talking about things.
Mhm.
Since the December, was anybody else gonna say something? Can
I have several corrections, but go ahead.
I mean, the December 6th meeting was the meeting at which I read off things that I wanted to see added to or whatever to the minutes. And the board had voted to have what I read off included in the December 6th meeting minutes.
Mhm.
And so I'm reluctant to look at any of the meeting minutes before that. Until that,
Till we get down.
because a lot of what I had read off impacts those meetings, not every single one of those meeting minutes, but it impacts some of them. So.
Meanwhile, they're kind of piled up
Anyway,
though.
so I looked through, I mean, October 25th, nothing had been changed. What I had wanted hadn't been changed. October 28th, not. November 1st, not.
Not what? not
November, not, I mean, that is just, November 1st was the meeting that Dick House
good. Oh, I
like
had these.
yelled at us,
Mhm.
and I wanted that to be a little more explicit in the meeting minutes. November 9th, that wasn't on that list, but the general fund amount looked wrong. And the time of the meeting was weird. I couldn't print off many of these,
Mhm.
which was also a problem. I mean, I
Well,
like to have it
that's
printed
but
off
it's
so I can
for
write
others.
on it.
Should
So
be
that
able to
was-
print them out of.
I couldn't, most of them I couldn't.
Okay.
A couple of them I could.
I could get them all printed, but it took a while because they're, it's not easy to access.
I played and played. Anyway, it looked to me like, do you have the
Yeah,
November 9th one?
I
It
have them
looked
all,
to me
yes.
like the general fund amount was different than what I had a record of.
I didn't notice that on mine, for my minutes. I didn't notice that as being a problem.
Oh, but do you, I mean, okay.
Yeah, I have it here.
I
What
think
do
they
you-
did notice, right?
I thought I was able to copy that one off, but I guess.
What
I
did,
can't.
which
I got
one
more
again
stuff.
were you saying? November 16th?
What's that?
What one did you want? November 16th or 9th?
No, it's the 9th that it looked like
The amount was wrong.
the amount and the general fund. And then maybe, what we should just do is go back and look at these things again.
Mhm.
We have a 9th. Of course, I don't have my budget thing with me. This doesn't have doesn't have the warrant.
No.
Anyway, so that I wanted to, so I got that far. And then I thought, well, I think I'll go backwards. So I went to March 7th
Mhm.
and that I was able to copy off. You know, it says at the top, March 7th, 2023, and I do appreciate it says 6 PM, so I don't have to try and, you know, decipher the military.
Which one are you on, March 7th?
March 7th, but then under the, it says regular town board meeting minutes held on
That's wrong.
23rd of February
That's wrong.
at 1 PM. I'm not sure.
That's wrong. Right.
Yeah, so and then there were other things. I mean, there were some things.
That one, I forgot to edit
That-
the header.
You know, under reports and presentations, town planner. I mean, well, what? What is the, you know, what did he talk about? I don't, it'd be good to have some kind of a list. Resolutions that declaring the town lead agency, I think it's the town board, the lead agency, right? That would happen in 2 different places. Anyway, so I stopped. And I think maybe, you know, after I can figure out a way to print these things off.
You can have mine and
and
print it
give
from
them to-
here. It'd be faster than trying to get online and do it. I can give you mine and you can print it.
Oh, okay, okay, good.
That'll be much faster than trying to get
Yeah.
online, because I printed the wrong things 3 or 4 times and wasted a hell of a lot of paper.
Yeah, no, that, like the March 7th, I had no trouble printing them. I don't, so anyway. But, I think it'd be more helpful for Janice to be able to see instead of everybody saying different things about different minutes.
Yeah, well, you know, we have the ability to edit them on. in
I was just
OneDrive.
gonna say, it's actually a lot easier if you can track
Well,
changes in the document itself.
No,
I'm
I'm
sorry, I
not gonna
didn't-
write the minutes.
No, no.
I did
no,
not ask you to write the minutes. Are your ears
No,
working?
I just don't think I should be able to edit,
No.
you know, without getting.
You're
it
making
on your-
comments. If you're making comments on a hard copy, you can make comments on the electronic copy, and then I can see it without wasting a shit ton of paper so that I can correct the record to your satisfaction.
So what happens when 4 people give comments
But
on?
the system, I mean, it captures all of the suggestions.
Uh-huh.
And
I
you
wasn't
can
able
always
to-
go back and say, here's what it was before we made
Yeah,
our editorial suggestions.
Yeah.
And that it's Google Docs and you're collaborating on a document with
I
5
wasn't
people.
able to, I mean, I actually thought about that for one of them, and I couldn't
Janice,
make comments.
do you mind
on it.
explaining how to edit? Not that I have anything to edit, but I have like the draft minutes open in front of me
Yes.
for March 7th.
How did you get
And
there?
it says that in the agenda, I clicked
There's
on
a
that
link in the
link.
Yeah,
agenda.
yeah. That-
And then
that-
you have to click,
You can't do it that way.
Yeah, you can. You can't
You
edit it
can,
that way.
but you
can't
won't be
No, you
able
can't
to.
edit it that way
okay.
because you don't want to edit it that way.
If people can allow me to answer the question, I'd be happy to answer the question. So the link that's on the agenda is for public consumption, public viewing, public, whatever you want to call it. Everyone in the town hall, in town board, has the ability to, here we go. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's our work drive, right? Here are, sorry, here's our town board meetings. All you got to do is go to that meeting and click on the draft minutes, and then it will pop up. Surprise. This is why we have a work drive that everybody can access. Then you want to go to review. There's this button right up here, right on the right,
That's agenda, not the minutes, but.
whatever.
The minutes
No, it
are
is the
in there,
minutes.
but
It
the
calls
thing
itself
is,
the minutes, yeah.
it seems-
Compose, review, distribute. So if you go to review, you can see that there's an option to turn on track changes, and then you can track changes. You can
I
write
think
comments.
there's a lot of things that are not automatically changed, and I'm not interested in doing all that work. In particular, the January 3rd meeting still has the wrong numbers. And I don't think that that's my responsibility to go back and renumber everything and fix it.
Well, no. I mean, that they're just a matter of commenting that the numbers need to be fixed.
And I commented at the last meeting, I just looked, they're not fixed.
If it's not in the document, I'm not going to see it.
I,
So you're saying that the January 3rd meeting minutes,
Yes, and I mentioned it explicitly at the last meeting and there was a long discussion about it, so it's not a surprise.
Which numbers are you talking about?
January 3rd?
Yeah, I have January 3rd. These are the January 3rd minutes.
Numbers
All
are
22
wrong.
pages of them.
And January 3rd, the other was 3.12 is an incomplete sentence, so it needs to be finished.
I thought that one got fixed.
I looked at it yesterday, and it was
3.12.
the same old one.
Okay.
This, Connors does not want to approve these until she sees the December 6th minutes with her reading into the record.
Okay, so it was added, good, then it was added after I looked.
No, this should actually be
Mm.
of her corrections. So what numbers are you saying, Pat, are not correct?
On January 3rd, the number of the items were incorrect. And the last time I looked online, what I saw online that was linked was the same. So they've been changed someplace else?
Can you be a little bit more specific about which numbers you're talking about?
Yeah. The
Talking about the organizing resolution.
correspondence was 5, and the minutes announcements comes after correspondence, and it was number 1. It should have been 6. Number 2 should have been 7. The second number 3 should have been 8. The second list I looked at yesterday were still the wrong ones. We're still not corrected. Was the wrong one linked to the agenda?
Here, I see you're talking about this. 5 correspondence, 1 announcements. That's an error with the automatic bulleting system. It's easily fixed. If you tell me, here, I'm gonna put a little comment, add comment, Pat requests these to be corrected.
I said it at the meeting.
Yeah, but then you're expecting Janice to remember that you said it.
That's part of the minutes. Yes,
Part of the minutes of that.
of
meeting,
that meeting, yes.
And she, and had said it. not
Jesus.
part-
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, you know, if we go in for work drive
Yeah,
and Pat makes changes,
yeah.
She's not
Um,
making changes, she's making edits and comments.
right,
Nobody's making changes, they're making edits and comments.
right, so,
Edit is
and
a
then what
change.
if, what am I reading, am I gonna be able to see her comments?
That's
Yeah.
the nice thing
Yes.
about it. You're
Okay,
going to
so
see
then
what,
I make comments, and then we end up with minutes that has 4 different comments on it, we're not, you know, so
Well, the beauty is
I
that
don't
once,
know which one's the final thing. We're gonna have to check back to see. We'd have to wait another meeting, which isn't all that bad, but. we'd
considering
have
how
to
many of
wait.
these have piled up, you know,
Yeah,
it just seems like
I
it's a
mean-
more expeditious way of dealing with it than trying to edit it, you know, piece by piece.
This hasn't been a problem in previous years.
What?
This hasn't been a problem in previous years. I remember tons and tons of meetings come, they approve the minutes, they saw, make corrections, and they fix them, and they're done. Tons and tons of times.
Yeah. Once upon a time, it used to be that way. It's becoming a problem because there's so many meetings that haven't
Right.
been dealt with.
Right. Well, Pat may, I don't mean to pick on Pat. Catherine may, you know, suggest a change that I don't agree with, or that Pat doesn't agree, you know, so. I
Although
mean, it just
you
gets
have the ability to
complicated.
comment on a comment.
You could-
I
you
mean,
could do
to
that.
be fair as well, you know, it's not a requirement that the
see.
board approve the minutes. It's a
At least one or two
courtesy.
meeting after that we'd be able to approve them. Because we'd still have to check back to see what the final thing was.
Yeah, we can't, what we need to do, what we have to have is a final version that we approve,
Yeah,
not an edited version, and not a version that has things missing on it, that has something to be added later, which still has in one of the minutes.
Um,
I will repeat one more time. It is not a requirement that the board approve minutes. It is a courtesy. So the board,
It's
you know,
not a courtesy, Janice. It's something
a
that the board
courtesy.
has
There is-
decided in the
there is no
procedures.
law that says the board has to approve the minutes.
The board procedure. The state says we don't have to do it. The town board has said that we would like to do it. and it's in the.
then you
the
should do it
procedures, so
because you are refusing to do it when there is one
what I
meeting.
don't wanna do is
that you
edit
don't agree
the
with.
minutes every time, you know, some of the errors are things that I assume that Janice could take care of by proofreading or something.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, what has happened in the past, at least for some of the meetings, is that, you know, when she sends it to us, I go in and I read through, and if it's just a, you know,
Typo or whatever, yeah.
it's a
yeah.
typo or whatever, I
Right,
fix it.
right.
You know, I suggest an edit. You know, that's what ends up being presented for board approval. Any of us could do that, you know, and make changes. And then, you know, when it gets to the point where it's on the agenda for us to approve it, it's got those changes in it. If we don't want them, we can, you know, we can approve whatever we want, but, you know, it doesn't seem, we shouldn't be fixing typos at a board meeting.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And, you know, what Guy told us with respect to the meeting is that, you know, the board has the right to amend errors. We don't have a right to change the record.
Right.
And we can't just say, I shouldn't have said that, take it out.
Right.
Or put this in because I thought I should have said that, you know, we can't
I
do
meant to
that.
say
Which is
And
actually
nobody
what
has been
Leslie
doing
did.
that.
No,
Leslie did that with the December 6th meeting, that she refuses to approve any other meeting because I haven't added her comments into the record. She has changed my record of what happened at the meeting where I explained something without bias, and then she said, no, that's wrong. Let me give you the biased version.
well, you know, there's going to be bias no matter who writes it up. Because, you know, you introduce bias by what you choose to include. You know, it's
Yes, but when I say that there is contention between two parties, when
I mean,
Leslie comes
Janet,
back and says, no, there was no contention, the clerk lost her shit and walked out. That's a little bit more biased than what I
That's
said.
not what I said.
That is what you said.
well, not literally.
Okay, I'm sorry. Lost her temper.
That's a big difference. Jesus.
Not really.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Oh, my God.
So
Exactly.
anyway, I mean, none of that necessarily needed to be in the minutes.
The clerk was extremely frustrated with the direction of discussion about budget lines and items that she had strong feelings about and an interest in.
That's what you said or what she said?
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
Yeah, but that, you know, that's a characterization. Which is, you know, I happen to agree, but it is a characterization. I mean, you're making a statement about, you know, Janice was frustrated. Probably. Otherwise, why would she have done what she did? But we're making judgments about what other people think. And what motivates them, which is not exactly the same as, you know, a factual record would say, you know, this is what happened, not why it happened. So,
okay,
you know,
so you're talking
the
about yelling.
clerk, you know, blew up at the board is I think a characterization of what actually happened
Okay,
for whatever reason.
yeah,
You know, saying why is not.
Not saying frustrated, just said.
Yeah, this is what happened. Yeah, so then, you know, if we ended up arguing over whether she was frustrated or whether she was
Okay,
angry or,
yeah.
you know, that's not for,
yeah, I'll buy that.
not for us to judge.
Yeah, so lost her composure and eventually left the meeting is better than
Yeah,
talking about being frustrated.
yeah.
All right. Well,
So anyway, one should be able to address this, like, you know, having a back and forth between Janice and you or
Yeah.
whoever else has an issue with how it's characterized in the minutes. To say, you know, what actually was said, you know, what actually happened. We can correct the record, and we should be able to do that without having to argue about whether
yeah,
your version or her version is the right version. And I think that, you know, doing it in work drive is way better than trying to do it here.
yeah.
That's not how it normally works, and I think really any place else I've been.
Well, you know, until recently. I mean, in the past, we didn't have the option.
And it worked much better. Now, why tell me why it's better?
That's
in the
actually
past and
not true,
now?
Pat. For the whole year and a half before you came on the board, we used an online work collaboration. It was only Office, and then we changed to Zoho Work Drive, and it worked beautifully. And it worked the whole first year that you were on the board.
Well, except you had told me that there was several months that weren't even done for the first year.
Well, toward the end of the year, she got swamped, and there's still several months of minutes at the end of.
Okay, so
21, wasn't
what,
it?
what I'm
Yes.
hearing is that we go back through work drive and make, our suggested changes
Yeah.
to all these minutes,
Yep.
which include a lot of editing and correcting of this, things that I don't feel like I should be needing to do,
You
but,
don't have to correct them though. You just have to say what needs to be corrected.
well, that's, to me, that's,
Yeah.
changing, noting that the date's wrong, or, that's something I.
Well, if you know the right date, you can go ahead and change it to the right date, If-
And why? Why should we be doing that?
Well,
You know how much time it takes to do, just to
Anyway.
read them and print them out?
we don't have to do that. I
I've
mean, we
spent
could
about
just- we
4
could
or
just-
5 hours.
We could just let them stand.
I mean, imagine how much time it takes me to write these minutes up, Pat. Maybe that's why there are some typos in them. Maybe it wouldn't hurt if somebody like Joel, who has a keen eye and likes to edit like this, doesn't mind doing a little copy editing. Maybe it's not that big of a deal to him. Maybe if other people on the board felt that way out of the kindness of their heart as being collegial, collaborative colleagues, it wouldn't be a big deal.
I'm wondering if we could do this in a quote special meeting where you
Kind of
sit
being on
with us,
minutes,
what?
spend a meeting on minutes.
Yeah, with Janice and the computer so that we could get it done, because if it just doesn't happen, it's not working. I mean, Everybody go
That'd be an
back
exciting
and
meeting.
pick up all, well, it would be nice if we could get these all done.
Yeah,
I mean, we could just sit there with, everybody pick the things they don't like or want to fix, or dates that are wrong, or any of those things. We come in. Janice has a computer right where we can sit with, watch it or whatever, and see if that works, because we're just not getting anywhere. I mean, it's frustrating, and half the thing is, the links don't work after.
right,
So-
after the meeting, right.
Right.
Well, that's
and
not what
they're-
the minutes
but
are
they're
found.
still highlighted. They're still
Yeah.
highlighted. They look like they should work and they don't.
Yeah.
So that's frustrating. So you have to go to work drive. You have to go to each meeting separately.
Yeah,
And for me, I have to go back out and then go back to that folder. I haven't totally mastered going from one meeting to another in the folder.
And we don't need to master that now, since we're changing the system. We don't need to spend time working on that now.
well,
That's a
whatever,
waste
I
of
don't know,
our
if you
time.
master one
whatever
system, you
system we
can
go
master
through,
them
it's
all,
still
Pat.
gonna have this.
Then we'll do it at the time when we get a new one, not now.
Yeah, because, we don't want the link on the agenda be something that the public can edit,
Right.
So you don't want to access it that way to make edits to it. It should be an in-house thing, regardless of what the system is.
I think we are not doing anything now. We've blown a half hour.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think we should have a separate meeting to go to do the minutes all at once.
Well, let's just.
And
start-
nothing else.
Okay, we could start with everybody who wants to try it at home with the work drive, start with that. And then correspond with each other and say, I can't do this, I'm willing to go, or whatever. And then if we need a special meeting to do it, but if we could just get to these.
Yeah.
I'm for that. I'm not keen to have a special meeting to
I know.
work on the minutes, but
But it would mean sort of the minutes are in work drive and everybody comments, it would still, you wouldn't be able to necessarily approve that meeting because I wouldn't have seen the changes until maybe that day or, so.
yeah, I mean, it
maybe
requires a little
just a
forethought.
month later,
Yeah.
a little hiccup,
Right.
yeah. Okay, well, I'll give it a try.
By the way, all of these meetings are posted on the website. All of these minutes
The
that have
website,
links are posted on the website.
we can't,
I didn't understand.
All the drafts are accessible on the website as they exist.
In a non-editable version.
we can't add our comments.
All I'm saying
no.
is that if
Well,
you're
but the-
worried that the public doesn't have access to these minutes, they do.
No,
That's all I'm saying.
no, that's not an issue.
I agree that it's not an issue with you, Pat. I'm just saying for anybody else who's worrying, that the public does not have access to these meeting minutes, and therefore we need to get through this backlog of unapproved minutes, then rest assured that the public does have access to them.
Yeah, that's not an issue. But the only thing that's an issue is the accuracy and board
Right.
approval.
Right.
And we can work it out. And it would be nice to do so, because they're piling up.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, all right. So we're not doing it right now, right?
Great.
Okay.
Work time.
All right. We did the authorization of taps across America.
Yep.
Goal setting. I mean, more fun than the minutes, I think. I have the project wish list. I changed it into project wish list. It started out as a capital projects, but there's a lot more to advanced planning than just capital projects. So they're organized by physical needs, water district needs, other needs, highway needs, and there's two kinds of other here. So they just could stand a little organization. This is the first pass at some organization.
So are we trying to prioritize these?
Are we what?
Are we trying to prioritize?
Yes.
And is there a timeline? Like, is this the wish list for the coming year?
This is a wish list for the future,
Okay.
which has no times associated with it. You know, it could be, for instance, having a community center has been a desire that's in the comprehensive plan and predates that. So it's at least, you know, probably 15 years that's been kind of like on our, it'd be nice to do this someday kind of thing.
Closer to 30.
It goes to 30. Yeah. So it's on the wish list. Question is, of the things that are on here, what are we willing to actually say, this is something we want to advance, and how do we do it? Other than just having it be, well, someday it'd be nice to do this. You know, what are the next steps associated with moving it forward? And part of that involves the capital planning part. You know, if you decide you wanted something to happen, then you have to start budgeting for, you know, the components of making it happen. And that's driven in part by the ARPA money which we got. We've got about $330,000 that we have to commit to a capital project of one sort or another in the next 2 years. And as of yet, we haven't, well, yeah, we did say that step one was to include the transition to our new IT platform as a capital project that we could fund with those ARPA funds, and that'll get you past the first year. You can make a case for doing that. You can't do it past the first pass because then it's part of our ongoing operations, and you can't do ongoing operations out of that money. Got to be.
So that's under other town government needs, right? IT and cybersecurity needs assessment and upgrades.
Yeah.
How do we word that so that it would fit? Is that an okay wording? Upgrades or?
Well, and we've essentially we've addressed that.
We've already done that, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I thought there was some
Although we still have to-
wording that, yeah.
No,
We talked about it at the last,
the first
Laura talked about-
first year can count from the ARPA. After that, it can't.
yeah, but what was the wording that you and Laura were talking about? Needs assessment and upgrades. Is that what the wording was? That would be able to,
Oh, I'm not sure exactly.
It should be in the minutes, but we don't have them.
Right.
um,
Maybe if you like, Laura can speak to that. Are you listening in, Laura? Yes, you are.
I can hear you, but I didn't hear that last little part. I'm so sorry about that.
Well,
I got a
Leslie
sick
was
girl right
asking.
next to me. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Leslie was asking how we could get the transition to the new IT support to count towards the ARPA money.
How is it worded?
It's. I think it's worded actually really kind of vaguely, to be honest with you. When I say vaguely, I mean, it's saying, it says just in the for the transition. It would be for, the, a new system. I would think that it would be, from what they mean, all the expenses that you would incur in going into this new IT system to upgrade your systems. So it's pretty vague, but I think that, and as they said in some of the conferences that we had about it, and we say, how is that worded? A key thing is how we word it. Okay, that's one of the key things, is how we word it. What are we doing to transition? Why do we need to incur these expenses in order to do that? So would it be probably for the support costs? For different things, you know how we're going to be paying X amount for support, but we can break that down so that we can see the implementation costs, which in the first year is going to be the bulk of what we're paying for, are the implementation costs.
The implementation.
And I think we can work with our IT people, with our new IT people, to help break that down so that we have something substantial to turn in next year, or toward the end of this year, when it's, this year, whenever it is, that we'll have our new reporting. They have you report in at certain particular times. So I think that working with them is going to be key to this, and wording it properly, and then extracting those costs.
Yeah, so that's our first chunk.
I don't know if that answered your
That
question.
little bit of ARPA money. We've also talked about using it for broadband, investment in broadband, one way or another, and that's where we haven't settled on how we would do it.
But I know for sure in this one year, I mean, granted, it's going to be what, like 34,000 or 37,000 or close to 40, however they have that.
I'm having trouble hearing you, Laura.
It won't be more than that in the first year.
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing you, Laura.
Right.
I'm sorry about that.
Well, I don't know whether we can adjust the volume on the.
It's not volume, it's distinction. It
Yeah,
doesn't, it's
right,
too
it's not
hard to
volume.
understand.
Not how
words.
loud it is.
That's
So
the
people have
problem.
to talk slower.
Yeah, maybe.
Slower, probably.
Maybe. It is hard to understand you, Laura.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Not
guys.
just you.
Yeah, not just Laura. I can't
Okay.
understand. Looking across the table and I can't understand her, so, yeah.
Well, one of the things we can do is let's work on, I'll work with Drew at getting this worded, because there are amounts with the transition that we will be able to, from the way that it does read, that we should be able to turn into for the ARPA money. Might not be that full amount, that full 40,000 or whatever, but I think it will be a substantial amount, especially in the first year, with that those amounts going towards implementation.
You saying 40,000?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's about the cost of the.
What?
That's about the cost of our first year.
Implementation of
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the first year.
Yeah, first year.
Maybe
Between
in that
the-
year we
Between
can,
the servicing and the
Right.
hardware that we'll
Hardware,
probably end up
yeah.
buying some of.
yes, I think you're right. Right, and then also we've been talking about hardware too, right? Where
Right,
they-
Right.
exactly. So that's, I presume that's how you came up with 40 instead of 36.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, it is, the first year it is 40. We've come up with 36 and come up with 32 because when we were looking at those numbers, we were backing out what we already had budgeted for it. So, we can narrow in on that figure.
Not on here, but I was just thinking about this, is we're going to want to buy the solar array.
Yep,
That's not on here?
No, I probably ought to be, don't you think?
yep.
Mhm.
And that's coming up relatively soon.
Yeah, no, it'd be nice to set a chunk of money aside to do
Yes,
it.
we already have 5,000, but we need about 4 times that much. 8 times.
How much more do we need?
More than that. It's close to $100,000, isn't it?
Right, how much have
The
we
solar
put?
array at the highway barn. Laura, do
Yeah.
you remember what the purchase price was for that?
150?
It's about $100,000,
Uh,
close
that's
to
all right.
$100,000, 95 to $100,000. But I wanted to just remind everybody,
We have a little bit, right?
years ago, when we put this in, and we were gonna, we were gonna set up our reserve. At the time when the decision was made, we were already gonna start that reserve. The thought was for around $50,000 out of our fund balance to start that reserve.
Yeah.
That was something that was talked about, to start it with amounts of money that we already had. And I recall about half of it. Not that that's what you have to stick to, but we can take a look at that and see what we can do. Let's zero in on a date and take a look at and make a plan. We didn't put it in there. We didn't start that reserve. And I know that we had some new board members. We had some new things happening. And also just with the thoughts that had been talked about, do we really still want to buy it? We don't have to buy it. There's other options too. I don't understand a lot about it. That was something Paul Hansen had worked pretty closely with at what the options are. So it is getting about that time where maybe we need to look at those options and see if purchasing it is what you really want to do, or what the options were for not purchasing it.
Can I ask a question about that? Is that array for the highway department, does it just power the highway department?
No, that's far larger than that. So it's the array that's here mostly powers this building, but it doesn't meet all that need either. But the other one is when it was sized to meet the town's electrical needs. So it does the water district. It does the highway, it does part of this building, and it also does the fire district. With a complicated formula that is a pain in the neck to administer, but.
We also, in that
No,
formula,
highway.
And when was that installed?
Yeah, the whole fire district, yeah, so both fire halls, yeah.
I guess my question is, solar arrays degrade
Yeah, eventually and slowly, but
slowly, but within 20 years.
I thought it was more like 30 something.
Well, it's
I mean, they're,
gradual.
Yeah.
As time goes on, you get less return from them.
yes,
I mean, we just wouldn't want to be in the position of paying for an array that we're then gonna have to replace in 10 years.
The timeline on the initial array was 5 years. When the 5 year, we have to pay, we're paying for the electricity for 5 years, and then we could buy it out after that. So it's not very long into the time frame when we have the buyout.
it was a pretty good deal. We pay for the electricity that it generates until we buy it at a rate that was predetermined. And for a while, it was kind of expensive because, they were projecting increases and rates weren't increasing that much. Lately, it's gotten to be a pretty good deal because the rates have been increasing much more rapidly than under the agreement. But it becomes a fantastic deal when we can buy the array, which costs way more than what our purchase cost is going to be when we acquire it, because then we're not paying for it anymore. It's our, the power that's generated will be ours.
and those are those Sunvestment bills that you approve.
Right.
Sunvestment is for that power generation.
Yeah,
And those amounts that we pay for that are all included in that formula that we use when we're splitting down and trying and figuring out, what credits go to what entity when we're doing the billing.
mm-hmm.
Because that's coming up in about a year and a half, I think we need a priority on determining that.
Yeah, and like I say, I think if we want to, we could use some of the ARPA money to help pay for it. Now, we've got some money saved up, right?
10,000, I think.
Is that only 10? Laura, don't we have some money set aside as so far towards the purchase, right?
Yes, that's in that, we have the solar, and I believe it is 10,000. That's basically what we've been putting in that reserve.
Mhm.
And like I say, also with the thought that the intention was to start that with 50,000 out of the fund balance.
Yeah, and we were supposed to add $10,000 a year and
20,000 a year would have made it even
Would
in
have made it
5
even,
years,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we didn't
So
even
we're
start
look-
for 2 years.
we didn't do
Yeah,
anything.
so what we're,
No.
We put $10,000 in,
The last year, first 2 years is zero.
yeah.
so if it's around 95,000, which I think is what, it's closer to what it is. So we're about 30, if you went with that $50,000 intention, okay? We're about 35 from that as far as where we feel we want to go with that. And we can look at that during the next budget process, and put another 20 or 25 budget for that and to put it into the reserve. So when that date comes up, we're closer.
Right. If we don't want to use the ARPA money. But we
Right.
could use the ARPA money, right?
I don't know that for sure, Joel. I'm not sure if there are provisions in there for that may exclude projects going back along.
They're already in place. We haven't
They're
got it
already
yet, but
Lakes.
Um,
Well,
Contracts in place.
let's look at it. Once again, it's
Yeah.
how we word it and how we look at it. And we can start to explore that. Let's explore it pretty deeply. I'm about ready to make a report, the annual report that they want us to fill in, our reporting. And we'll open up some things and start asking some questions.
Yep. So, yeah, we need to know whether or not we can use the money, that money for that. And if not, we
Right.
need to plan.
Or if we want to, and.
Well,
whether-
exactly, right.
We won't even purchase the array, so I mean, it sounds like to me a large discussion with
A
a
large,
lot of different,
much more information gathering before we have any discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
There's a lot,
that's
we need a lot more information before this.
so what else, I mean,
So this should be a priority. I would think this should be a priority that we start looking at these details now.
yes,
yeah,
Okay,
so that we can answer this question because
so I would put this number 1 for priority.
would you?
what,
Yes,
I,
I think it should be.
I wouldn't, but I mean, priority,
start
Look-
looking at it right now.
I mean, number 1 was technically the IT,
You want to
that's
screen share?
IT
Well, that's
stuff.
done.
Well, it's not, I mean, this is all one package, so that, I mean, that was 1. 2, I mean, let's.
Janice, could you screen share that list?
Shall we
The
have a
alternate-
The wish list?
A wish list. It would be helpful if we had dollar amounts for some of these.
Well, the thing is
things.
that we don't have dollar amounts for, some of these things have been pursued to the point where they could attach a dollar amount to them.
Right,
Like what's it gonna cost to build a new, community center?
Sure, but something, like, it seems like there's a lot of low-lying fruit.
Yeah,
So, for instance, install a barrier chain. That,
well, yeah, that one's straightforward.
right.
Even the salt shed roof replacement should be,
We should have a number for that.
yeah, I mean, and some of these things are things that we could also probably get grants for, or there may be cost of.
I was wondering the ADA compliant things that are in
Yeah.
there. I wonder if it's not possible to get a
Yeah.
grant for that.
Warren Cross suggested that might be possible.
sorry.
I don't know, I always keep going back to the broadband access, I mean, I really. We can keep saying we have no way of knowing, but, how much it's gonna cost or how to do it.
Well, yeah, the trouble is that, we don't have a clear path forward.
Although we got that communication from Dan saying that he was hopeful that the county was going to do something substantial.
Right, and then where we're left off with that is that, the county commissioned this, yet another study that was going to nail down where the gaps are in coverage. And then we had a discussion with him at one of the County Council of Government meetings. where, Nick Hemholt who's at the head of the county's effort in this regard, indicated that they were going to explore all options once they had that information in hand, include, all options. So nothing was off the table, but we kind of, we were pushing the county a couple of years ago at this point, before, when Anna Kellis was still in the county legislature. She was in agreement with many of us in the outlying municipalities that we ought to be moving towards a county-wide fiber network that would be, county level organized. There was resistance on the part of the county administration on that point. So we were concerned about that. That's what led us to do. Town of Danby commissioned a study to say, where are our gaps? And we spent $5,000 in order to have with Chuck Bartosh survey the town, say where are the wires and where are they not, to identify the places that were where the gaps were. We haven't taken next step because the next step is, well, how do we get service to those who don't have it? And then more broadly, what about those who do have it, but it's not adequate? And for some people, it's too expensive. So Dryden has taken a different approach than what we have done historically here, which was try to get the internet service providers to extend their lines to reach more people. And Rick Dietrich, my predecessor in office, spent, literally decades trying to work with Time Warner to get them to extend their lines. And it was a very frustrating experience. It just didn't work. We did an intermediate thing with Chuck Bartosh with the towers that were supposed to give, line of sight, which provided some marginal improvement. It worked for some people, but there's still a lot of gaps. So we could, the path of least resistance is to give money to the internet service providers to extend their line, basically publicly subsidized extensions of private lines, which they then own and can charge whatever they want their customers to pay. Somehow that rubs me the wrong way, but the alternative is what Dryden is doing. And I asked in a forum this morning, there was a Connect All forum that was for the Southern Tier, whether or not we could use satellite, low Earth satellite that Starlink does. Some of the people on that in that forum indicated that there are issues with that as well, due to their capacity limitations. And I had read that also. When more people get on, they start restricting how much you can use it and charging extra if you use more. So it's already an expensive option that some people, well, it's expensive, but compared to what? It's not cheap, and it's something of an issue where running the fiber out to people has a per dwelling cost that runs into thousands of dollars in some places, and it's like, is that ever going to make sense?
I do think it's an important enough issue so that what we ought to have is on these things. I wouldn't number them. I wouldn't order them 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd have a top list. Solar needs to be done because it's coming up due and we need to decide what we're going to do. We already have a contract on that. I would put broadband on the top list as well. Those are two very important things that need to be done immediately.
Yes. So it's on the other. Down the bottom.
So we can't edit this document, but
well, we could if we go back into Work
Well,
drive.
I like Pat's idea of, I mean, rather than coming up with a numerical list, let's at least put them into bins.
Yeah, top
Yeah,
bin, right?
Yeah, yeah, put them in bins.
Yeah.
I like that. I just wanted us to do something to get organized and start prioritizing and then identify, more, what do we need to know in order to be able to even do that? In some cases, we're missing information that we need in order to contemplate them even.
I think we need to ask questions about the salt shed roof replacement. That depends on whether it's required or not. Laura?
Well, it has a
how
limited
soon-
longevity,
It has
that's the thing.
it's like the solar array. I mean, we should have.
Yes.
Some money set aside, but not enough.
Yeah, I mean, it has a limited life expectancy.
Usually it's 15 years.
Yeah, it's around the 15 to 20 year mark. We have done the proper maintenance on ours. It isn't even something that Pete's even contemplating right now at this moment because it is in pretty good shape. But once again, how about I'll give you a report on that.
Good.
What, where are we in the lifespan? I lose track of time.
Yeah, I know I lose track of time too. Are we maybe at the 12-year mark, somewhere in there? Let me do some digging and I'll give you a full report on that
Okay,
and what the expectations are of what it's looking like and what we're, and we have got some put away for that too. And another part of it too is so maybe 12 years ago, it was one cost. We'll
well, yeah,
call
of course.
the company and we'll find out how much it would cost to replace that, how much it is going to cost to replace that top. So I'll put something together and we'll give you a report.
Okay, because we need to know when it's going to need replacing.
Exactly.
And then what it's going to cost to do it. Now, that's something you could use ARPA money for that, assuming it comes up in the next, I think we have a 4-year limit on when you could spend the money. But otherwise, we need to budget for it. It would be nice to budget ahead for them and stuff,
The
instead
other
of saying,
thing I'd like
wait
to-
until the end, and then all of a sudden you gotta,
Well, it was just like the solar array. We were.
right,
set
exactly, we're
aside.
supposed to do it, but we have been unwilling to increase the budget enough to plan for these things because it increases the tax levy.
Yeah, so we do it all at once and that'll really screw people up.
Yeah, which is not very intelligent.
I think one of the things for that top too, let's look into maybe some grants. There's a
look at
lot
what?
of grants that come out there for different things like that.
I'm having trouble hearing you again.
There's a lot of, we can look into maybe getting a grant for that as well.
Yeah,
For
For
replacing-
the salt shed roof?
Yes, that's a possibility. They
Okay,
have some of the different things. We can also use CHIPS money to replace the roof.
yeah, it's a capital improvement.
Chip-
It doesn't, the
That's
CHIPS
right.
money doesn't have to go just to roads?
No, our CHIPS money can go to, I remember that one year when we had all that flooding and we didn't do anything, we didn't spend any CHIPS money on the road, but we needed a new grade all so bad.
Yeah.
We used our CHIPS money to buy the grade all that year. You can buy equipment.
It picks up what comes out of the speaker.
and it has to be there close to get it.
And this is in the way,
It wants to be in front of the speaker.
No, the speaker is.
so we need to move.
It's the speaker that, well, I know, can we adjust the volume on the speaker?
It's
This is
not
in the
volume,
way.
that's
This
not
is in the
volume.
way.
Yeah, most of it is not volume, that's right.
I don't know, some of it's volume.
Everything right here. So,
Can you hear it okay over there?
Totally.
Yeah, okay, so if you can hear it there, then it is volume.
I don't think it's volume. I mean, I
But
can
is
hear.
it, you're having trouble hearing us from?
Yeah, we're having trouble, well,
Physically, this is in the way. It muffles everything. And over here, I can't understand the word.
can we
It's
move,
not a volume,
we may be able to move that over,
Right.
the screen,
the whole screen. Just next time we can try it.
yeah.
But I-
Anyway, it's hard to understand you unless you speak slowly and
Right.
and right at the microphone.
Okay, as a matter of fact, we
It makes
use
it hard
CHIPS
for us
money.
to look at papers to talk too, which is really hard. If Laura's trying to look at her papers to talk and she can't do that without, I mean, the system is difficult, there's no question.
Yeah, hold the papers like this.
Yeah, Hold it right in front of you like this and
Okay.
try and talk. Great.
I don't know,
Actually, can you guys hear me now?
That's better.
a little better.
Actually, we used CHIPS money to build our salt shed.
Do we?
Yes, we
Wow.
did. Our salt shed was built 100% on CHIPS money.
Oh, we can use chip monies to do the.
You
Yeah.
can use CHIPS
Yeah.
money for salt storage. You can use CHIPS
Salt.
money for equipment. You can use it for any of the needs that you have for doing roads, of which salt storage is one of those needs. So
Right.
we could use CHIPS money
Mhm.
when we replace that top. But let's get the price. Let's get the price of the top that fits that
Mhm.
from manufacturing, which was manufacturer who was Calhoun. We still have a very good relationship with them. And we got them on speed dial. Okay. So we'll get a good price, and then we can take a look at, you know, how we want to go about that. But for it to
But-
be like an emergency with money, we can use CHIPS funds to do our replacement when we need to do that.
Mhm. The trouble is, we've been diverting our CHIP funds from the roads for the last couple of years into our culvert replacements,
Oh,
which is a good use of CHIPS funds, but but we've been shorting the the resurfacing. I don't think.
It's all one and the same. I guess you could say it's kind of, and like you say, it depends on the way that you look at it. We've had so many culverts that have needed to be replaced, which are
Yeah.
part of some of our major roads, and they needed to be replaced before we can do resurfacing on those.
Oh,
So-
sure.
So a small amount like 30,000 to replace the roof. Let's get the figure. We can also use maybe we've decided to use CHIPS money for half of it. It's one of those things that we can, I hate using that word play with, but when you have funds that you're looking to do other things with, we can come up with funds to replace that. It's not a huge expense. But we'll get the figures and then we'll make a report to you.
Mhm.
We've also had other funds come in that we never expected, like the inclement weather money that they've given us. Now they've given us pothole money. That started last year. We get more of that now. There's another, I'm trying to remember, we've got our inclement weather, we've got our pothole money, and paved New York money, along with our CHIPS money. So that's come in very helpful when you were talking about, shorting the roads. Doing a lot of preparation before these roads should even be resurfaced is something that the highway department is looking very closely at for all of them. Got some time with it.
Yeah. There's a couple of ADA things. If there is money, I don't know where to chase it. One of them is the acoustics in this room, which is an issue for people who have trouble hearing. And Warren suggested that curtains in here would help with the bounciness.
Wouldn't just help for that, it would help for having meetings in the daytime when you can't see because there's so
That's
much
true.
light.
You could close the
around
curtains.
the
Yeah, right.
screen.
And if we could get,
funny, I like it when-
if that could be addressed that way, that would be nice. It's an issue for me that we do not have an ADA compliant entry into this building.
Yeah.
And maybe, the court can get some money for access too. I'm wondering whether or not, as part of there's occasionally there's money available that way. They could do part of, the redo in the front. The double doors are problematic. It's in the nature of double doors that it's a pain in the neck. And I think about this the other night and say, why don't we just replace the double door with a single door with side lights? and have that single door be on an actuator so that somebody can push the button and the door opens for them if they're in a wheelchair. We still need to fix the ramp and redo it. And that's something that I proposed a solution for over a year ago. And I've had people having trouble visualizing what I had in mind, but I got Michael working on a sketch so that you can sort of visualize what it would look like, but
What's wrong with the ramp?
it's too steep.
It's supposed to be a little long.
Yeah. And you need an accessible pathway from the parking. And we don't really have it. So the fix, you fix one thing and it precipitates other things. What I proposed was that we have, we eliminate well, now we got a ramp and we get stairs. I think a ramp could serve everybody. We put it up the middle. And go down to a landing at the appropriate slope. And then you still got a 16-inch drop off at the bottom when you get to the parking lot end. And then I put in a couple of steps for those who are ambulatory, and then run the sidewalk off to the east. And you're going uphill there, so you can practically go out flat. And you come out where the 2 parking spaces are now, which could be handicapped spaces. Which if you do that, then the fact that they're also the charging stations.
I was gonna say, then let's not.
Then you have to move
expand
the charging
stations.
Yeah, right, exactly. Then the hard charging stations need to move. Which raises the question of where would we move them to, which could be across the parking lot. And if we're going to do that, could we maybe add more? Because that's something else we talked about doing. So that becomes part of the picture too.
Is it possible that, in the near future, there'll be some money for more charging stations?
One of the things that Jim could look into,
Right.
there's a company, there are a couple of companies that will install them essentially for free. As long as they get the revenue from because they're not free, but to use them.
Right.
Right now, we've got it so that people can use this for free.
Yeah.
Which isn't costing, it's not free. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're short on our electricity, because we're playing it out that way, and then we turn around and paying for electricity at market rates to cover the usage of the town hall.
Right.
And
Right, so that's something we need to look at.
yes, exactly.
Charging stations.
So to me, that's a fairly high priority, getting an ADA compliant entry. Along with the parking and access pass. And if we could get the court to help out by getting maybe doing the door part of it, that would help. And you could replace the door with a new single door.
So right now in our top bin, we have, I guess, cyber security / IT upgrade. We have broadband access.
And the solar arrays, and I would say put the ADA compliancy in there as well. So that's 4 things right now in the top bin.
And I think most of them are pretty expensive.
Yeah, what was the other thing besides the ADA?
Broadband.
No, I got that one.
Solar arrays, paying for the solar
For
array.
the solar arrays. We may not want to do that.
But that's why we have to decide now before it comes up in 5 years. You don't wait until it comes up and then look into it. We need to evaluate.
Right,
now.
exactly. We need capital planning here. We have to figure out a way to pay, assuming we want to buy, because that's part of the question too, is do we want to buy?
Yes, correct.
You have the option of not buying and continuing to rent.
Right.
And that's what you do in analysis
So
to
we're gonna
determine
do
whether it's more cost effective to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what that's why that needs to be on the top list to do that evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like me to prepare a report? I'm sorry to interrupt and call Paul Hansen in. Paul Hansen worked on this extensively. He's got all the details of this.
Paul Hansen has the detail.
Yeah,
Has
Paul was
all the
involved
details,
when we
and
set it
we
up.
can pull out the stuff and give you a report of, and just try to get something on the table so that you have a report of some good information with this, at least something to start with.
Yes, that's a good idea.
For that, for the salt shed roof
Yes,
and, looking at what we can and cannot do with the ARPA money as far as that goes, and a report of some research that we will do with what we could charge through ARPA for our IT. Those 4 things. I'm willing to work on that.
thank you.
On top of everything else.
My pleasure. I know. That's okay. That's okay. It's important because we're going to be starting our budget process soon.
I know.
Yes.
So
We haven't closed out last year though yet.
no, we haven't, but we're working on it. We're getting there.
Yeah.
Having the auditors in for as long as they were, they did set things behind, but we're getting there. We're getting there, and not to rush it. And we want to be, we want to have things accurate and
Yeah,
well,
not on here, but certainly on my radar and a priority is that the interest rates have risen
yeah,
to the point where our current arrangement, right now, we're getting basically no interest on the money we got parked. And in the past,
we're getting some, but not a lot.
not a whole heck of a lot. Yeah, it makes sense in the past because the deal with the bank was that they waived the fees in exchange for us basically having all that money deposited, but not getting anything for it. And then we looked at what would you make if you put the money someplace where you could get something for it. The increase in cost from the fees that you'd end up paying with the bank were more than what we would be making. That's not true anymore.
Not true anymore. You can
No,
get
now, when we
pretty-
went from, practically nothing up to 4.5% right now, it's a significant amount of money that we're not taking in by not having the money. But the situation is complicated by, if we move the money, then we need to look at the whole bank situation to say, let's say, look, we need to look at other banks, go to this bank and say, we could move our money here because what you'll be charging us in fees, we can do better elsewhere. So that's a certain amount of research that needs to take place in conjunction with it. Although both Laura and I think it's important, neither one of us has broken out the time to actually make it happen.
What bank do we currently use?
Key bank.
Key.
I can tell you too, Joel, remember I told you I went into the bank and I threw it out there. I talked to someone who was in the bank and let them know that we have been approached by other banks and that fees are the hot topic on our list. And I have gotten some emails from our current bank on that. I'll have to share them with you, Joel. I've gotten several emails and it happened quite quickly. So the idea of these fees, putting the money to get the most interest that we can, along with working with these fees and deciding on a bank with these fees, is kind of all in one project because those
Right, exactly.
add up and really take over our interest. So that's another project. Yes.
Mhm.
Sorry to interrupt.
We have something that, authorization for the supervisor to invest idle funds is one of the authorizing resolutions that we did in the organizational meeting. Easily said, but not so easily done. But it should be a priority given how much interest rates have come up.
What are the restrictions on which kinds of banks?
Oh, there are a lot of restrictions on where you can put money. We have to have, essentially the places you can invest public funds have to be very secure. So you can't put it in the stock market, you can't even buy, can't buy bonds with, if you do CDs, they've got to have, backing. But there is there's a cooperative that was created a few years ago, a couple of them actually, that have pooled the money from participating municipalities and invest them in qualified places for maximum return. And we could participate in one of those. I forget the name of them, but I get periodic posts from them saying, "Hey, why don't you join us?" And until recently, it didn't make any sense, but it does now. So. Yeah. So there's other things on here, things like in senior housing. What, if anything, we want to do towards moving the possibility of a community center forward. In my mind, that means talking to the park folks about whether that location will work at all. Because it was purchased originally for that purpose, but if it won't work, then we have to start asking ourselves, well, if not there, then where? And if we're looking at acquisition of another site, then you know, that's something we'd have to both explore and fund.
I do think we should look at the water district thing. It looks like they're very small elements.
Yeah, these are pretty much small, and
I
they're
think
also
we should
already,
look at them first to get the cost and see if they could be put in the budget for this year.
well, they're already in process, actually.
And
File cabinet, I don't know if anybody noticed, there was one here.
Yeah, I noticed that was fun.
I gave it to them.
Good.
We weren't using it, it was empty.
Is that crossed off? Did they get a lock put on?
They're working on that for it.
That's easy.
Yep, so that one got done.
Good work.
crosswalk to bus stop,
Yeah.
96 feet.
Right.
That's already in process with a study. I've been watching those that. And there is a study coming. That
Right,
it's
the
a
state
three-
agreed to
it's
do a
long-
study.
Yes, but it could be 3 years before we
Yeah, yeah.
know anything.
Right.
So, but they are willing, anybody has more ideas, they said I could send them, or we can send them any kind of correspondence that would help support it. So the last one I was going to ask TCAT if they would consider writing something as well. So I wouldn't mind
We
any
get
help,
some
get
folks.
ideas.
Folks who ride the bus, they
Right,
could maybe attach something to the bus shelter after these people, but
that's a good idea.
give us a little.
Right,
Put bullet points as far as what they should include in the letter.
right.
Well,
I was gonna ask TCAT themselves,
Yeah.
because I said they might have some liability if we suggested it that way.
how they- and- but
'Cause they-
even if they couldn't.
Because they drop them
might
off
have
on this
good-
side, right?
They might have good points that we. could
Right,
use,
they have
you know,
experience with.
They would
Yeah.
know what we
I
should
already-
say.
They already know about TCAT,
Yeah.
that's already on their list, so if there were some supporting documents besides my telling them, and they know it. Because they already have, they've done a look at it, they see the bus stop, so they know that, looking at support for it.
Well, to the extent that we have, youth activities that occur both here and at the park,
They know that part.
they need to cross back and forth.
That was what precipitated it, they know that too.
So we've got reason to want a crosswalk there. And in fact, that's in the comprehensive plan.
Good.
Well, I think it was put in the comprehensive plan for when it was done, that's what I think,
Hmm.
but so relevant,
Yeah,
just at a different corner now.
right.
Bye, Dawn.
David is going to keep me apprised of the issue with the Olivia project too, because that would be another reason for
Yeah, yeah.
back and forth.
Yes, yeah, right.
And it goes with the core development, if you get nice to cut.
Yeah.
Pick up new stuff. Yeah, but it is in the works.
Maybe we should get a traffic light.
Traffic
With,
light?
with a walk button.
Yeah.
People get dare to cross.
That'll go over good.
Yeah,
Can't
I will
tell me to
just
stop or anything.
quickly say that there is one problem. And that could be problem for us getting it, and he said, when there's a long line of sight, then what happens is and they do put them on state roads, so that definitely happens.
Right,
yeah.
But the long line of sight, people who drive every day, their mind is going to the drive. The people who are walking periodically see a traffic crosswalk and they think, the traffic should slow down because I'm stepping into a crosswalk.
Mhm.
The drivers are,
Oblivious.
right,
Yeah.
and so that's one problem, but he said in spite of all of that, it is possible we're working.
Mhm. I thought you were gonna say that because of the long line of sight, that somebody who wants to cross the road can look up
No.
and down the road and see there's a car coming in.
Yeah. I mean, I know when we would have community council events in the park, we did not even want people across the road.
Mhm.
There were times we even assigned each other to go and cross somebody, a slow walker. Don't let them do it.
Mhm. So I mean, I'd like us to make some progress on the community center issue. And probably the first step is to say whether or not the park is a possibility for it being located there. And if not, then we should be talking about acquiring property someplace. Potentially next door.
Next door.
Yeah, I mean, if you took it, I'd rather it was on that side of the street, but if it was on this side of the street, I mean, if we've got this spot underutilized space now with the bandstand. And if you could acquire the one next to that, then we'd have enough space to do something
Yeah.
significant. Yeah, and that requires looking into whether or not the guy's willing.
There's the old highway property.
I mean, one of the possible avenues would be grant writing because
Yeah.
community centers help aging people,
Sure,
and aging people who can't see, hear, or
Yeah.
have no teeth. All those things have to do with how much it costs to have people living in a community, and
yeah.
so
see-
we might be able to get some grants that way. I don't-
Right, and we position ourselves to be able to seek the grant funding if we have a plan, you know. So I mean, we say, you know, we've identified the need, we have acquired the land, we have a site. Even better, if we have a plan for what we want to put up, and then we can say, and then you know, oftentimes the money becomes available, and you have to put in an application, and you've got, you know, a month to do it, or two. And if we're positioned so that we know what we want, then we could put in an application, you know. But if we say, well, we'd like to do a community center someday, that's not going to get you there. There's the internal things here, like the risk to the clerk from the windows, which we haven't got a good fix for yet. As on the list of things that were identified in the workplace violence report. And you know, it interfaces with other things like the code office and space needs and we need a focused effort to figure out what to do. And a budget. I mean, it's going to cost money to do anything. We tried doing mirrored film on the windows, but that didn't work. That was a relatively inexpensive option, but it didn't work.
What about flipping back? Change the subject, but what about the handicapped access to that front door?
We looked at that last year.
Yeah.
Because you're pretty close to grade there, and there was space for 2 parking spaces.
Right.
The cost was adding up to the point where I think Teresa said, you know, forget it. You know, it was going to be almost as expensive as redoing it over here. Not nearly expensive, but you have to add openers. The way it was accessible before was you went in the one door, across the hall, and then in the other door. Because there's not space enough between the 2 doors to come in the one and then open the other without you can't back up. So the one way to finesse it would be take the inside door out, so that you only have the one door to come in, and you could put an opener on it, you know, with a button on the pillar or something. So that's another possibility. It does mean that, you know, your handicap access is different than your everybody else access. So they kind of, you know, can be seen as you know, it's kind of like letting people into the kitchen. It's not the you're treating them differently than everybody else, but
That's the way it is at St. Paul's Church.
yeah, well, I mean, you have these accommodations,
Well, there's
you
an
know.
elevator, that's.
Yeah, you have to go out,
Yeah.
get the elevator.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, you know, what the law calls for reasonable accommodations. It's just that, I think if we can, I mean, a main entry that serves everybody would be better than, a main entry that serves the ambulatory and then a separate entry for those who are not ambulatory.
Well, if that could serve both, I mean,
It could, but the reality is that people have come to, I predicted this, when they put that building up, that this would soon be seen as the main entry instead of that. And everybody said, oh, no, it's always been the front door, it's the front door, And now we call this the front door, even though
Well, it's not appropriate for a lot of events, because if there's a meeting going on in here and people want to come in, and I don't think it's really appropriate, but sure, there's
to which,
other,
to come in this way.
have you use this door for everybody.
Yeah.
I see nothing wrong with having it be tapped, except, somebody's got to do the problem with a lot of those doors is they stay open and they're great heat loss, so something takes a long time, like when you go to the post office,
Yeah.
the door takes forever. It opens really slowly, it stays open a
I like
long time.
I can run in behind the person.
Yeah, I mean, if I can do that, then I think at least I won't be making it
But
open.
here, I mean, if there's anyone.
Well, see, that's the thing is that this was an airlock entry, the way we had it. So 'cause you open the one door, you come in,
Right.
you go over here and then you open the other door.
Right.
And so, but in the meantime, the other one's got a chance to close, but, but if you have to take the inside door out,
Right,
then you're gonna have, wide open to the outside until it finally gets around to closing.
Yeah, anyway.
Not great, but then again, we're gonna have the same issue over here.
Well, it's worse over here. There's no.
If we
no,
had
not
a-
even an option for a second board.
Exactly. And well, it's here,
Well, unless we
it's here, but
move the wall, add an additional wall.
well, there's doors at both ends, there's the door right here. and
there's
there's
this
the
door
to
and
the
then there's the
office.
other door, yeah. But, you almost have to have them closer too.
Oh,
Anyway, it's more to talk about, but,
yeah.
we could spend all night on this, which
I know.
I don't want to do, but I did want to invest a significant amount.
Yeah, we don't want to.
Yeah, yes.
Right now, I already have people thinking about stopping to.
Mm-hmm,
Oh, yeah, that's true.
yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, this is, if you want to sort of say this is a nice installment.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah,
We've identified some needs that need to be addressed and information that needs to be had in order to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's set that aside and deal with some of the other stuff that needs to be done. The short-term rental, the planning board, Scott Davis in particular,
oh,
raised the question of whether or not the planning board could be involved in some way in dealing with the short-term rental issue. I brought it up at the last planning board meeting, at which Scott was not present. And the sense of the planning board was, and we probably confirmed this, Leslie, but that they wanted to take a look at the results of the survey in order to get a better sense for whether and to what extent they would want to get involved. So essentially, that's the, are we as a board receptive to that approach?
It would be
I mean, I
useful to
thought-
have their input. So yes, it would be useful to have them look at the results and have them input.
I thought, yeah, one of the things that was brought up, that whenever, we're gonna be looking at the surveys and or talking about, if it's on the agendas, and make sure they know, and if they want to, they can come.
I would give it to them ahead of time so they can do it at one of their meetings if they don't have to come to another
What?
meeting. I would give it to them ahead of time and let it go to the board and let them discuss it at the board meeting so they don't have to come to another meeting. Let it go to the board. Let it go to the planning board first. Let them look at the results and provide input to us.
That sounds like a good idea.
And why not? We give them an opportunity to basically weigh in. They could say, we don't want anything to do with this hot potato. Or, gee, this looks like a really manageable project that we can help you out with. We'd like to be, involved with determining what the scope and everything is going to be. It could be anything in between. It's ours to hand them off to whatever extent we're.
I remember during the discussion that when that option was sort of brought up, that people there, not necessarily Scott, since he wasn't there, were like, yeah, you know, let us know when you're gonna be looking it over, and when you're gonna be talking about it so we can participate. That was what I walked away from that. I mean, Jody said, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah,
so I
my impression was where they wanted to see the results of the survey, and then based on that, talk about how they might be involved.
Which means we can give them
Oh, I
results
didn't hear
first
that.
and then they. can
That's not what
decide.
I heard, but
Yeah.
that's all right.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense because that's the way things are organized in terms of the planning.
But
board
that's not what I heard
responsibilities.
them
I know, but
say.
that's why I'm saying now is
I'm
that
just-
it's logical organization for the planning
Talking
board.
about what they,
Yeah.
what they talked about.
But I agree with Pat, that I think that's a logical way to approach it. I mean, they don't know how much they want to be involved, frankly, until they take a look at what people think about the whole situation.
Whatever, but
despite
that's
what
not
we've
what I
been-
heard.
Despite what we've been hearing about on Facebook, you know, we don't have a preconceived notion of where we're going with this yet.
Right.
So, I mean, I'll be very interested myself in seeing what the survey shows. And then Steve mentioned last time, you know, who's going to do the collation?
He said he would.
Well, I was talking to David about this earlier today. We've gotten quite a few responses electronically.
Oh, good.
And then we have an envelope with the paper ones. If somebody could just take the paper ones and enter them in, so they had them all electronically, then it would make the analysis a lot easier.
Good idea.
Of course, who's going to do it? And say, well, why not Cindy? Unless somebody wants to volunteer to do it. Because she's assistant to the planner. So that was my rationale for having her spend time on it.
Well, it's gonna be, let's see how many we get in paper.
Yeah.
We
What was
get
the
10.
deadline for submission?
May,
What's that?
May 10th.
May 10th.
May
that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I don't know that we get a flurry of them at the last minute. I mean, I would tend to think you would get a flurry of them when you first get to people's hands, but, and then, you know, David shared the link on Facebook, and it's really easy. I mean, you click on the link, it takes you right to the survey,
Yeah.
you fill it out and you push enter and you're done.
Yeah.
It's easier than filling it out on paper.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of them that way.
The link is on the one. we
Links on the
sent out,
website too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody's not on Facebook.
Right.
No, but not everybody's on the website either, which is why we got the paper versions to deal with.
Yeah. Well, that's good. They're getting turned in.
Yeah. So anyway, the upshot here is that we're receptive to the planning board participation, and we'll see what they are interested in doing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. We'll give them a chance, give them a shot at it first.
We definitely need to get to the easement, the public hearing setting for that
Yep.
conservation easement.
And what's the next thing? Oh, no, actually, the next thing is the response protocol, but yet again, I didn't write up what we wrote, what we came to in that
Okay.
meeting,
Let's wait.
2 meetings.
Yeah, we'll wait.
We'll give you another couple weeks.
Another couple of weeks. Well, actually, that's another week. You have
Yeah,
another
no,
meeting
I
in
know.
a week.
I know.
Next meeting is a week from tomorrow.
So I move we set a public hearing for the Hoffman Conservation Easement for May 17th at 6 p.m.
I'll second that.
May 17th?
Yeah. I think it's too soon to do it for the second,
Yeah.
which is next week.
Yes, it is. Mm.
Any discussion? I think this is the first vote tonight, isn't it?
Yep.
It is.
Okay.
Ready? Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes,
Mannion.
Yes. Next steps in noise. My sense from the way it went the other night was that we need to further investigate the adequacy or applicability of the
state law.
state law on, what's it called?
Penal code.
It's Penal Code 242.2.
48.20.
Yeah, which is disorderly conduct, is the word.
Discon.
Mhm. Which, we've gotten lawyerly opinion on both sides of.
Yeah.
And we've got,
Law enforcement.
we got law enforcement on both sides as well.
Yeah.
What Warren found in the meantime, which I thought was really interesting, was that one village, do you remember which one it was? There was a village and the town of Newfield. The town of Newfield was evidently contemplating a noise law in 2015. The planning board there looked into the matter and probably had the same kind of reaction from the public to the idea. But found that this disorderly conduct statute and advised the town board that was an adequate way of dealing with it.
And what's their experience been?
That's a good question. And you should call Mike Ellinger and ask him.
Well, I think that the possibility would be that if that were the case, then if you publish that information,
Yes,
that has
exactly.
the same effect as, that was a
Right.
bad, just don't jump. It might have the same effect as if we had another law and we quote, published the information so that people know.
Like that village, I forget which one it was. I looked at the document and it basically has and they shared this information with the public. Here's how you do it. And the limitations of it, how it's applied, the constraint that you have with the officer having to observe the violation, or there has to be affidavits, and how you do all that. And then so it's really, it was pretty.
You don't remember the name of
pretty
the village?
impressive.
So
I don't
Warren had
remember
that?
whether it was Oswego or anyway, it was
And that's one of the things we need to evaluate very carefully before we do anything else. We need to look into all of these things, because in particular, when you talk about something, it could have changed over time.
that's true.
In
too.
particular, the law was written years ago.
Like 70
Things
years ago.
change a lot,
Yeah.
and things change over a few years. That's why we need to re-examine what we did before and do that before we bring anything again to the public.
Yeah.
So the
and-
first
and-
steps needs to be looking into all of those things, in particular, when the law applies and how effectively it applies in solving the problem. And those are different issues,
Mhm.
different issues. Those are the two things we need to look at carefully, from legal precedent and with law enforcement, and other towns, the effect of other towns. So we need to be doing a whole lot of research. And Warren has actually done a lot of that already and is
Yes,
willing
he
to help
has.
more. And I will actually be willing to help Warren as well.
That's great.
But did Warren send you the information about that village?
Yeah. In fact,
Can you send that?
I thought he shared that with everybody,
Really?
but maybe not. Maybe it might have been just you and me.
Well, I would love to see what it was.
No, I'm remembering now. It was with you and me. I asked him whether it'd be okay to share with everybody, and he said yes,
Oh,
but I didn't do it yet.
well,
Well, yes, that's my bad,
Yeah,
as I say.
you're bad. You're bad.
So what other things can we do to get that information?
Well, there's a bunch of things to do.
On Newfield and Endicott.
Endicott, right, okay.
That's weird.
And I could talk to experience and to Mike Gallagher, who I do know because he's part of our supervisors group. But also we need to talk to the state police
Right.
and the sheriff about their willingness to enforce that state law.
Yeah.
And how, and what it means to enforce it.
Yeah, right. All of that, I think, I agree. needs to be done before we need to basically assess the adequacy of that existing law.
Yes,
If it can be shown to be, well, we need to educate the police, if maybe that's just part of it. But if it can be shown to work, then there's no point in passing another one to address the issue, if it will work. It does. That letter that Ted was it Lozano, the retired police officer, shared with us, made a really good case for why that's a good law to use if it is usable, because there's several things built in, and people that he thinks are good things. One of them being subjectivity, but subjectivity using a local standard, so that it's up to the judge basically to interpret what constitutes unreasonable noise. The statute doesn't define unreasonable noise.
Right.
It just says it's unlawful to make unreasonable noise. So that allows the judge to make the determination of, yes, the guy was using the chainsaw at midnight, but because the tree fell across the road, those kind of determinations, maybe this was a loud party, but it's this first time in 20 years that this individual has had a loud party, and it's because his daughter got married.
So we talked at one point of having the representative from the sheriff's department coming here. Is that something we want to pursue?
I would
want to have someone speak to them first.
it'd be better to have somebody speak to them first, because otherwise they'd have no clue what they're getting into. That would be totally unfair.
Yeah,
I mean, they should know that we're looking at this state law, for
yeah,
what, we need them to help us know if it will be relevant
Yes.
for residents of Danby.
right. And Warren gave me a link to who to contact with the state police at the upper levels in order to, what is your experience and willingness to apply, this law. Ted also suggested that the state police would be unwilling to enforce a local law or ordinance, which seems unlikely to me, but that's something else to check out, because it would be a contraindication in its own right.
And we've also were told in the past that if we didn't have a local law, they wouldn't bother.
Yeah, the sheriff would, law enforcement wouldn't do it without a local law.
Right.
Yeah, and if that's either true or it's not. Well, it's true if they think it is. That's the thing, so it could be a matter of just education that you can and you should,
Right.
but it might have to come from a higher level to say,
And why aren't you?
why aren't you? Yes, exactly. So there's a bunch of stuff to check out.
Is that something that you're willing to do, Joel? Are you looking for a volunteer? Contacting the sheriff and state police?
I'm willing to do it, but I'm also willing to share the load if I was going to help out.
I would be willing to help with that.
I'm willing to help too.
Okay. Who would you like to contact, Pat? You want the state police or the sheriff?
Okay.
Why don't I do the sheriff and Pat can do the state police? If we
Okay.
share your link for more.
I'll share the link with you. All right. And I'll share that communication more with everybody.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, did you?
I think so.
Indeed.
I mean, I don't really know Derek Osborne all that well, so I think he's probably just as likely to be effective trying to talk to him as me.
That's the sheriff's department?
Yeah,
What's his
he's
name?
the sheriff.
Derek Osborne.
Okay, that sounds like a path forward.
Yeah.
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 What else we have? Oh, couple things.
Oh,
The, I thought it was in here that we were going to talk about the clerk.
oh,
No, it's not on the agenda.
I see that it's not.
Nope, so we can't add it.
Shouldn't it be? There are a couple things that are on the agenda, though. The executive session for update on property negotiations, which I think we'll probably keep to the end, otherwise it's not fair to the Zoom audience. It won't take long either. The Southfield Trail extension. And then the property tax abatement for conservation easement. And I did share with you that Claire's communication about this, which was actually a pretty apt characterization of where we were over a year ago. We had a recommendation come out of the CAC committee on implementing the law that we were we now have state authorization to do that would allow us to do tax abatements in exchange for conservation easements. And the law that was passed by the legislature enables 4 categories of abatements. And the first one went from 15 to 30 years. The next one went from 30 to, I think it was 50.
50, 75.
50, 75, and then permanent. And the amounts, well, the 50 to 75 was like, what was it, 80%?
85%?
I think it was 85%. The permanent was 90.
Yeah.
So I mean, we thought there was a ridiculously small differential. So we dropped. So we checked with Guy.
So I'm sorry, the 85%, that reduction of the property tax?
Property tax on the land protected by the easement. And that would be, and then we have the option of well, we would pass the law. The school district and the fire district and the county could opt in if they want to, but they don't have to. But the state authorization allows them to opt in. It's revenue neutral for them in that it doesn't change what the levy is, but it does change the tax base a little bit. So everybody picks up a little bit. In the case of the Ithaca City School District, we're looking at fractions of a penny per thousand in order to do it. But there's a philosophical question about whether they want to enable it at all. We came up with the tentative proposal that said we don't really want to do that third category. The experience of communities that have done this is that if you give people a choice, 15 to 30, everybody opts for 15 because they can get that much of a percentage reduction without committing to a longer term. So what's in the law is a range. We asked Guy about what kind of flexibility we have. Guy said you can't, you've got to stay within the ranges that are within the law, but you don't have to offer the whole range. We don't have to offer all the ranges either. So we were okay to drop one out altogether, and we were okay to narrow the scope of within a range. So that's what the committee was saying. The sense of that group was that 15 years was shorter than they liked, and that they would rather the upper end of the range. That is contrary, as Ted pointed out, to what the original committee wanted. The original committee actually proposed a lower category at 5 to 15, which was their recommendation that came out of it. went to the town board. The town board said we want the planning board to review it. And also the CAC. The CAC did not recommend that lower, 5 to 15 range. The recommendation was that we go with what was in the legislation for the other 4 communities that had adopted it. And the planning board concurred, and so did the town board. So what we went to the state with was a proposal that we adopted pretty much as everybody else had done it, and that's what we got. So when we came back to it, and looked at what our options were, the committee's recommendation was whether we go to the upper end of that lowest range, and instead of 15, go to the 30-year end, and that we offer 29 years at the 50% level, I think it was, for that lower one.
Yeah.
And then go with the middle range, but again at the upper end of it, so there was 49 years, and then permanent. So there were only those 3 categories. That was a recommendation that we set aside when we dealt with this as a committee, because David pointed out that we might have a better shot of having the school district participate if we involve them in the process of determining what the structure of the implementation would look like. So we tried. David had a contact that he pursued, and we decided we would go that route. Unfortunately, the person he contacted turned out not to be a particularly good way of plugging in, and it was not a priority for the school district to deal with this at all. So they might get around to it eventually, but then it wasn't happening in real time. It is highly desirable for us to have the school district participate, because school taxes are a larger chunk of our tax, by a significant portion than of our total taxation than the town or the county.
Am I the only person who's in a different school district?
No, I am too. We could, well, this was a question too, whether, and Jonathan Zisk is also worked for the Candor School District. He knew the superintendent before, but he retired, understanding. And his understanding is that the new superintendent would be a lot less likely to be supportive of that. I don't have any experience with Newfield to know one way or the other whether there would be any receptivity there, but the feeling of the committee was that the city school district is the lion's share of the property in the town anyway. And if we could if they bought in, the others would be more likely to follow suit than it would be if we approach Newfield or Candor or Spencer Benetton.
I think you're gonna have a very hard time convincing the city of Ithaca school district to do that.
You may be right.
Because if they did it for Danby, then they would need to do it for everyone, actually.
Well, if they did it for everyone, it would not be that big a deal in terms of the impact on the tax structure. What we're dealing with at the county level is that the director of assessment, who should not be a partisan, but nevertheless has stated strong preference for not adding more tax exempt properties, which is essentially what we're doing. His recommendation is that they thought this was ridiculously generous, that only permanent easements should be granted abatements, and that the abatement should be way more modest. So he would like to see, and he'd like to see it applicable countywide, not just in Danby. So he wanted permanent, lesser amount, and the only way that could happen is if the state were to authorize it, because it's different than what we got authorization to do.
Well, isn't that one of the state categories?
Yeah, but at 90%.
So the percentage has to go with the category.
Well, yeah, and we don't have the option of extending it to anybody else in the county. The legislative grant is the Danby. So the county would have to choose to go to the legislature and get authorization to do a tax abatement in exchange for conservation easements countywide at whatever percentage they want to pursue, and have that legislation passed and the governor sign it. There was that hasn't gone anywhere either.
I mean, my understanding also is that conservation easements can be very hard to enforce. Which I would think would become even more complicated with easements that are not permanent. In other words, someone gets a 30-year easement and then the 25th year they violate it. Where
Well,
does that go?
the penalties for doing it are pretty stiff. I think, I forget the exact provisions, but you have to give back everything that you've benefited over the time of the easement. And maybe even pay a penalty on top of that for quitting before the end. So it's, it's a pretty meaningful thing. What the feeling was of the committee, the CAC, when we looked at this, was that short-term easements were seen as a way of somebody who potentially wanted to develop a property to sort of park the property, so to speak, without having to pay taxes on it, even though they intend to develop it.
Exactly.
And then after 5 years or 10 years, turn around and develop it. That's unlikely to happen if you're making a 30-year commitment.
Right.
So, because that's basically generational. So one of the motivations for seeking tax abatements in exchange for conservation easements in the first place, well, first of all, it was driven by people who wanted relief from taxes. So, and they found this in existing state law and said, well, this could work for us. And the committee came together around that proposal. But they were looking at, well, like I say, some of them would have rather 5 years, 5 to 15, rather than, a 15-year shortage. And certainly among them, 30 years as a non-starter, but that was the recommendation of the committee to the CAC, and it was endorsed by the CAC pretty much unanimously as well.
Yeah.
So that's the recommendation to the town board, is basically we should stop waiting on the school district. We should do what we can, which is to move a law into position that would allow people to, at least if they entered into a short-term easement, I got distracted. One of the motivations, to come back to it, was that oftentimes when we approach people about doing easements on their property, the objection is, I don't want to tie the hands in perpetuity, So that's an argument for having a temporary easement at all, whatever the length. There might be a willingness to do it for a generation, to say, I'm willing to say, in my tenure, at least for the next 30 years here, this is not going to be developed. And then, the heirs are then in a position to reevaluate at the end of that 30-year period and say, okay, we're willing to re-up or not, but that's, for those who have that objection, it's a way to say, well, if you're willing to do it for at least 30 years, we have that option for you now. And you get a significant, but not the same kind of reduction you would if you made a permanent commitment. I don't know whether those temporary easements are subject to the same kind of tax credits that the state has for permanent easements. If you have a permanent conservation easement in New York State at this point, you're entitled to a 25% of the property taxes on the land, again, that's protected by the easement, per year, with a cap of how much it can be. And that's a benefit to everybody who's, you know, who commits to a permanent easement. The IRS, at last account, this is my computer. Yeah, it's so loud. The fan's noisy. The IRS has under Trump at least, and I'm not sure whether this has been revisited, has argued that that tax credit that people can get annually for having a permanent conservation easement amounts to a return of the benefit that your charitable contribution. And so they're disallowing the charitable contribution on the basis of that, on the basis of that return over time. So the only way to take advantage of it if you don't get the benefit. So people, I have noticed, I know that since this ruling, which is now several years, there have been very few conservation easements with the land trust. Almost all of them of their new acquisition have been gifts, outright gifts of the property rather than an easement on the property. That's one way to ensure that you have the charitable contribution, because it's nobody's going to quibble with that. You're not the one who's going to get the benefit of any credits in the future. Similarly, if you sell the property right after you put an easement on it, you're not the one who's going to be getting the credit for it. So that puts you in a position to take the credit for the charitable contribution. So that's the other way it can be done. Most of the easements that we've gotten have been for people who don't care about the charitable contribution. They're willing to do it anyway. So, so the recommendation is that we go ahead and draft the implementing law with the understanding that what's probably going to happen is that people will only be entitled to the town tax portion of it. But it's better than nothing.
Yeah, I thought part of the point of recommending it is that if we don't do that, there's nothing available, and at least it's something.
Right. Well, I mean, there is something. The something is for permanent easement, and it's that tax credit.
Right.
But it's a pretty, it's enough to offset the cost of doing the
Yeah,
easement.
but what I meant is if we wait for everybody else to count the.
It might never happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't
right.
keep waiting.
right.
That's what I meant.
Right. I mean, people have been asking, what happened to this? We got the authorization over a year ago. We haven't done anything. Well, it's not that we haven't done anything. It's that we haven't moved on it. We investigated it. We made suggestions. We decided it would really be good to get the school district involved in the process. We made a good faith effort to try to make that happen. It didn't happen. And at this point, the CAC is saying, well, enough already. Let's do what we can.
I should probably know this, but is the conservation easement somewhere in Soho?
Yes, it's in the CAC
Folder.
folder. Yeah. It's also available on the website. Well, the template is there on the website. And this particular one was linked to the agenda.
Right.
The Hoffman Carlson one.
Right.
Which is the most recent one come up. We got several others in the process. We have 6 altogether so far.
Yeah.
Since we started.
That's pretty, I mean,
It's
pretty good.
It's modest, but it's it's significant. It's some good ones.
That you're recommending that we vote for it?
Yeah, I'm asking the board to authorize going ahead and drafting that law.
Are you doing that as a motion?
Yeah.
Third.
Any discussion?
Need any further?
Any further discussion? Yes.
Just to draft the law.
Yeah, just to draft the law. Ted would like to comment if you'd like to let him comment.
It's short, but he already did comment.
He did, but go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, Joel, you gave a pretty good summary of things. And my thanks for that. The one part that you left out was basically some of the reasoning and some of the history, and I will be as short as I can. there are only a few other towns in New York State that have this provision enacted for them by the legislature, and we investigated all of them. The one,
Yep, all four.
all four, yes. And the one that came the closest to Danby in many ways had some instructive history that is important to understand. First of all, not all, but the vast majority of the initial conservation easements under this plan were the shortest term possible. And it was done long enough ago, so they now know that pretty much all of them renew it afterwards. And knowing that was the incentive to say, look, people just don't know how this is going to work. That's why we want a short one to start. And that's how that got there. As far as the question of people using this as a tool to put money in the.
Whoops, you just got muted. I don't know how that happened, but it wasn't
I don't either. Where did you lose me?
What's that?
Where did you lose me?
The second point you were making.
People.
Okay, let me just say that you made reference to people feeling that that the developers would just use this to not pay taxes until they're ready to develop. There's a very simple response to that, which is, so the difference is that they could develop at any time they want to. This prevents them, and it may not stop them from developing, but permanently, but it keeps them from developing for a period of years that you already know about. So I think the idea that this would be used as a tool to basically save money is not going to happen. And the other thing that I think has gotten lost here, I don't think you mentioned it, is that the reason for doing this, and this was exactly the case in the town out near Buffalo that did this, was to preserve open space. And there was a lot of resentment among people who are paying very high taxes on their big open properties, that they are in fact implementing the town's policy out of their own pocket. Now, people do that for different reasons. I can give myself as an example. I do it because I want the privacy back here. I'm not doing it for the benefit of my neighbors, but by darn, my neighbors know I'm doing it. They were so grateful when they learned this was not going to be developed. And that's coming out of the pocket of the people who own the property. All of this is revenue neutral to the town, to any of the taxing jurisdictions. It's revenue neutral. And if you consider it simply a means of implementing the policy that you already have in place, somewhere in the comprehensive plan, it says preserve open space or something like that. It's cheap, it costs the town nothing. And it saves the people who are doing this right now, for whatever reason they're doing it, from having to pay the taxes. Revenue neutral. I don't know anybody who would be, I know people who are interested in this. I don't know anybody who would be doing it simply because they wanted to rip off the town. It's completely revenue neutral. People aren't doing this badly. The idea.
Well, it is revenue neutral. It is not without increased cost to everybody else. So
very small, as we documented.
Yeah,
There's monitoring, there's drafting.
There's no if you want conservation.
Well, yeah, there are administrative costs on the one side, and there's also the loss of revenue, which
Loss of revenue.
You don't lose the revenue. It's revenue neutral. What you do is you decrease the tax base so that that's the same amount of money levied increases the cost to each,
the tax
remaining property.
In simple English, the tax gets shifted to the rest of the property owners in the town. And for what it's worth, one of the things that got this started was when New York State shifted the tax burden to the big landowners. This happened about 10 years ago, probably more than that by now, when they, in one fell swoop, just added 50% or 100% to the value of land. And that all of a sudden unbalanced things toward to the detriment of the larger landowners. And right now, large landowners are also paying, in a sense, the price for increased property values on small ones. Whereas I have no intent to develop, but I'm already paying the taxes on the fact that I could develop.
Yep, yep.
And
Which is
that
basically
makes
based
it
on the
very-
mandate from the assessment department is based on, you know, their
yeah,
valuations are based on a mandate that that the property be valued at what it will fetch.
Right, that's absolutely true, and it's reasonable. But the fact remains that I'm paying property taxes on what I could do, but what I am doing is preserving the open space and keeping my neighbors in a state of harmony, and gives them literally, they've told me they drive up the road and they say, I'm home. And it's not their house they're seeing. So
Okay,
it's a question of what could be
enough
versus what
already.
is. Thanks.
Yeah. So we all understand, I think, the arguments for, you know, why it could be different. And
Oh, may I add one more thing, very short? Which is
I
that, which is
don't
that,
think so, Chad. I'm going to have to say not.
your loss.
I
Can we
think,
vote?
I think we're ready, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Janice,
Okay, Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes,
Kenyon.
yes. I think the one, we have covered the business except for the executive session, right?
Right.
yes.
Right, yeah. So I move to go into executive session to update the board on the property negotiations with NICE on the Southfield Trail extension.
Second.
Janice,
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes,
Kenyon.
yes. You know what, if we could just shut off the Zoom, could stay where we are. Well, Kelly's here too. Yeah.
You would have to turn it on and again. What you could do is mute yourself.
Yeah, I was gonna say we can mute and turn off the video if you want.
We can go to the other room. It won't take a few minutes. We'll be right back. Yeah, but-
Yeah. Well, I got mine on the porch.
They were bad enough for us, skipping the uncovered. Wow. Now I always see if I get anybody else when you're Marty.
Somebody said you had to actually move to come out of executive
Okay,
session.
so do we?
I think that's right.
Are we muted? Hi,
I
Janice.
believe, hi, I believe you do have to move to come out of session.
What's that?
I believe that you do have to move to come out of the executive
I believe
session.
we do.
Yep.
All right,
Come
out of executive.
Oh, yes.
okay, so was that a motion from Steve
Yes.
Second.
and a second?
Janice. I mean,
Hi, Leslie,
Leslie.
Yeah, okay, I think we're ready to vote.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes. And I can say there's nothing to report, it was just an update. So meeting adjourned.
London.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye, everybody.